phasing, repetition with gradual change over time, represented the start of minimalism's halcyon period. From the late 60s into the 70s, Steve Reich and new kid on the block Philip Glass would preside over a high court of New York minimalism and take it into the stratosphere. The composers who began it all, Terry Riley and Lamont Young, have continued in their own vein, remaining to this day happy, experimental musicians.
You know, minimalists, we can be more complex thinkers or even feelers, you know. So it doesn't explain the spiritual aspects of the music at all. And it also doesn't approach explaining who we all are.
What the term minimalism does do, however, is help the listener. It's a gateway into a world of extraordinary, transcendental music, of wildly differing styles, that could only have been born in the USA. That could only have been born in the USA. That could only have been born in the USA.
There are a lot of genres in Africa that depict music of various forms, but none is as strange and futuristic as the minimalistic styles of African drumming. What you're about to listen to is not a song made later than the 40s, before minimalism ever entered the ears of the European or the American scholar. Hugh Tracy recorded multiple songs from around Africa, and in Tanzania, he recorded one specific song. And these songs that he recorded, which this specific song was part of, he albumed Tanzanian Originals. And I want you to listen to it and tell me if it's any different than the minimalistic style you just listened to, or the ones that will show up in the future or have shown up since the 70s. I know if you're African, that sound is neither startling nor shocking, but to the American, this can sound like it's made by a computer, but it's not made by a computer. This is just normal marimba mixed with tinny sounds that are hit multiple times to create a specific sound, which was then encompassed in this minimalistic style. This minimalistic style, as you can see with the composition that they were playing, acquires a lot of instruments from around the world, and some of them are marimbas and kalimbas and xylophones and all these other things that, when utilized, create this multiple sound. It is obvious not only that they got it from around the world, but they got it from specifically Africa because the style is so similar. They have admitted this, obviously, in various ways and various styles. Steve Reich especially admitted it the most. But what's more than this is that most documentaries you watch about minimalistic music, they try to suppress the foreign influence over it. In fact, in this documentary, when one of the guys, I think Terry Riley, mentions that he was inspired doing droning, which you see a lot in disco music, a sound you hear in disco music that usually accompanies a drum, they try to downplay this sound heavy and try to stick to, but this is new in the West. And then when they're done saying it's new in the West, in the final parts of the documentary, they say it's new to the world and it couldn't have been made anywhere else, but it was made somewhere else. It was made in Africa thousands and thousands of years ago. In fact, like I told you, this is what Egyptian music would have sounded like. This is what South African music sounds like. This is what music from around the world of Africa has always sounded like. Multiple drumming on multiple things. This is why when you check, they always say that African music is composed of multiple percussions because they're just drumming on anything, tinny, ropes, even stuff like violin and whatever. When they first acquired, they're utilized in this rhythmic pattern, which adopts something which was adopted in their In C, which is one of their famous, I think some people consider it the first minimalistic song, In C, which utilizes these patterns.
A piece of music which needs no instruments, just the human body. That's how Steve Reich, seen on the right here, described his clapping music, one of many works where the innovative use of rhythm has earned him the accolade America's greatest living composer.
Assalamualaikum gan ñëw na ne leen ko bisimilaay dalal ak jàmm bés bi sa bésa ne jigéen balaa baax day laaj.
Johann Sebastian Bach, and then bebop, Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, and Kenny Clark. In California, when I was a graduate student, at night I would go to hear John Coltrane. John Coltrane had a huge influence on me. I went to Ghana to study Ghanaian drumming. I studied Balinese gamelan. I went to Ghana to study Ghanaian drumming. I studied Balinese gamelan.
Whoever came up with the idea of having Terry Riley's In C performed by Africans and showing the similarity in a more core way is a genius. For you can see quite easily how this music, by mixing African minimalism and the minimalism that was inspired by Africans that ended up in the West together, you see how the influence is very common to the Africans. In fact, they added onto it, giving it a rhythmic flow, which many newspapers quoted about this event. In The Guardian, it says, it is 50 years since Terry Riley composed his conceptual masterpiece In C, whose insistent, kaleidoscopic, rhythms fed into both classical and rock. This update, the first African version of the piece, unites a group of Malayan or people from Mali with Brian Eno and Damon Albarn. Wisely, they don't ape the original. I'd be careful with that word. Choosing instead to retain its core component while adding snatches of flutes and strings. It is these new details that give the set its charm, whether it's the winding solos, the glorious interplay, or the ravishing spoken interlude that emphasizes music's universal power. Sometimes these drum patterns that have been added to other instruments can be used as voices. So in other words, someone can use their voice to create drum sounds, whether it's singing in the pattern of the drum or different, actually doing drum sounds with your mouth, as in this video. Though the songs of Africa seem so similar to each other in composition, especially since they all use drums in this fashion, not every song or every genre in Africa, but there's at least one genre in every African country, I'm talking North Africa all the way to South Africa, that has this polyrhythm, minimalistic, using drum patterns on other things that are not drums, including voices. And this is a fourth similarity between North Africa and Southern Africa. And of course, why wouldn't there be an influence on North Africa? They're only north of the other Africans.
Algiers. From all over Africa, they came to the first Pan-African Cultural Festival. Singers, dancers, musicians, and lovers of the Afro arts. It was just about one of the most uninhibited and talented gatherings ever seen. Masses of lights turn night into day as thousands flock to watch the skill of the dancers and thrill to the exotic rhythm. From the moment the festival began until its magnificent climax, it had been one long, fascinating show of unbridled talent.
The North Africans, truly African in their culture, brought something which is the same, and we will listen to a demonstration of African drumming or Moroccan drumming. But wait a minute. Didn't people from North Africa colonize parts of Europe long time ago? Shouldn't there be an influence of their music somewhere in their history? Well, what if I told you the Moors influenced a lot of dances and songs from Spain, especially Spain, which is the place they would have landed first? And if you pay attention, you would already know what it is. To give an example of this, let's start by showing Italian influence or Italian music, because that would have been the music the Moors would have encountered when they first got to Spain. The Moors came in hot and heavy on a music that lacks drums, such as this Italian music, which is very happy and very upbeat, but it does lack the rhythm of the drum. And this is what they did to it.
Ay, se te pone la cara, gitana mía, cuando te ríes. Quisiera tener, quisiera tener, y la boquita mi caramelo, pa' hablarte que no ofende. La boquita de caramelo, pa' hablarte que no ofende.
Gone are the high kicks in the air, replaced with stomping. And I showed you in other videos that stomping in Africa is just paramount. It's just always there. And you see that in the North African dance, the line dancing, the European line dancing or the Phoenician line dancing, they replaced it there in the dabke. In this side, in America, they replaced some of their dancing with tap dancing. The African influence on tap dancing is very well recorded, showing how stomping the feet, and of course also
Master Juba, aka William Henry Lane, was the first African American to perform in front of an all-white audience during the 1840s. He often toured with white minstrel shows. It was a combination of the Irish jig and the African steps created by the African slaves, such as the walk-around. This style of dance would eventually influence American dance styles such as jazz, step dancing, and tap. John William Suplet, aka John W. Bubbles.
in other genres, other cases of dancing, and the stomping here is brought to you by the Moors. Again, this is not something that's disputed or anything. You might dispute what race the Moors were, but this African tradition is brought into Europe back then. And instead of this occasional clapping that they do, it's like instead it's regular clapping the whole way in a pulsating fashion, mimicking other African dances. Gone are the old ways of the Italians, replaced, but you can see that they didn't throw away everything. Just like in that line dancing, they didn't throw away everything. They kept what they wanted to keep, and then they moved on with the rhythm. And remember what I told you about last time about African music. Clappers are not spectators. Instead, they guide the music. And of course, this tap dancing and this tapping in all these genres, it guides the music as well. That's because it is the music. These people are not spectators. They are part of the dance, which is why everyone is enjoying their time, because they are the music. And of course, you notice the clapper standing right behind this woman, clapping as well. And you'll notice that if you look at Dabke, which is that line dancing in the Arabian side, it too is being guided by the stomping. And again, the fact that I can find a Greek equivalent, because the Phoenicians went to Greece and the other areas, the fact that I can find a Greek equivalent which does something completely different from stomping. Instead, it does sweeps, which is typical of these areas. If you look at their other dances, you can see that there's a direct link between the African influence. Now, let's not be silly. Europe influenced Africa. The Middle East influenced Africa. It's just another way of transportation. We transported stomping. They transported some of their flutes, some of their ideas into Africa. And if you look at Ethiopia, you look at South Africa, you look at West Africa, you can hear them. Notice these black Yemenites and realize to yourself that these black people who are mainly descendant from Abyssinians or Ethiopians are the ones that are going to do the dances that I'm about to show you. I think last time I didn't make it very obvious to you guys that these are the black people of Yemen who for a long time have been outcasted, so they kept their culture solid. It's not that the Greek version doesn't have any fancy footwork. It's pretty impressive. But look at the black Yemenites. And this dance, this Dabke, is a Yemenite dance that spread throughout Arabia. But look at the dance and then look at what those guys are doing. They're doing those big leaps. That's something that's completely out there in that Dabke dance. When you look at it at the Greek version is kind of whatever. It's kind of solid. It's kind of solid. And the Dabke now doesn't just allow one person to shine, whereas everybody else is just kind of doing something. And also there's this multi-rhythm where it's not everyone doing something at once. And you notice this also in the flamenco dancing. When you look at the Spaniards, the flamenco dancing, there's suddenly chaos rather than this very uniform, hey, let's do this in unison.